So given that this is such a, in a way, expansive and intense topic, which is increasingly coming to the forefront, I thought the best way to deal with it would be for me to do 4 little sequence presentations and then open it to discussion. And each presentation will be about the release of 3 neuroalchemols and how it relates to us investigating. This talk is based on my new book, Toward a Truly Equivalent Investigative, and IN, capital V, with a dash. The whole idea was we've developed a science of the outer, which has helped us enormously, but we've neglected to understand how important it is for us to learn to investigate inwardly and to what we investigate about. You have to hold it close.
Hold it
closer.
This way.
This way, Trish, right like this, okay? Yeah. So, inner investigation has to do with investigating our own nervous systems. And the reason we investigate inwardly is to actually support ourselves to learn to be more and more present in all 3 main aspects of our nervous system. One aspect is the central nervous system, abbreviated CNS. And the CNS is the spinal cord, through the spinal column, and it branches out through various plexi, which are known as chakras in the ancient traditions. And the thing about the central nervous system is that it's about our sensory endings. Each of these plexi radiate nerve endings out to every single cell in our sensory nervous system, which is every cell in our body boundaries, including eyes, ears, nose, and throat. So when we open our sensory nervous system, or CNS, we're becoming more and more sensory present. And that's what we're going to talk about, neuroalchemols that relate to that. But then there is a second branch to our nervous system known as the autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system controls or innervates the core smooth muscles in our body core, our various organ complexes, which are really the heart of chakras. Chakras are more about our inner organs and the energy they generate and the emotions they create for us. Because basically what our inner organs are about is us seeking to fulfill ourselves at each of these chakra levels, okay? And we've been neglecting teaching about the autonomic nervous system. But when a person learns to fully open, which is what the neurochemicals will be about, when we learn to fully open our autonomic or emotional nervous system, we start to shift from seeing reality as material matter form only, which the left brain frontal cortex tends to focus on, and we start to see it more in terms of pure energetics. And as we go through these neuroalchemols, it'll become evident. And these energetics, in a sense, inner alchemy or higher alchemy, about the alchemy of consciousness, is about shifting us into metaphysical knowing. And metaphysical is the higher physics of pure energy. And we're starting to understand that in quantum physics. We're starting to understand that, oh my God, when you really open your inner eye, your prismatic way of seeing reality, which we're going to deal with, suddenly you start to see reality as an infinite, mystical, magical field of pure energy. You start to see that everything radiates out of pure energy, or the same source of all. And finally, the last component that relates to all of these levels of opening neuroalchemy within us have to do with opening the heart. All of the great mystical traditions, which I showed you some images, and I have some more images here which I'll pass around. Basically, if you trace alchemy back, I looked up Wikipedia this morning, and it goes back to the ancient Vedas. It goes back to the ancient Chinese mysticism. And it goes back to ancient Egypt. And in other words, these traditions of understanding ourselves at a deeper level have very, very deep roots. And they're much more holistically encompassing than approaching so-called spirituality or religious understanding from a left brain frontal cortex point of view alone. So what happened was, in the context of the evolution of Christianity, and remember, Christ never founded Christianity. It wasn't founded until 250 years after him. All he attempted to do was metaphorically point us toward deeper conscious understanding, which will become evident as we go through the alchemical release process. But what happened was, people from left brain frontal cortex from a believing context, people, as the Bible was formed, saw an opportunity to sell so-called Christianity from a belief point of view, right? And the whole idea came about, believe and ye shall be saved. Christ never said, believe and you'll be saved. He said, seek and ye shall find. And what we're going to talk about is what you can find when you start to go through this inner alchemical journey, when you start to take responsibility to unfold and open your heart, your sacred heart, to the max. Okay? So, and what happened, of course, in the Middle Ages is certain people started to understand, oh my God, traditional Christian teaching is missing the whole point, right? Yeah. And so they developed alchemy, inner alchemy, as a way to hide this seeking process, because they knew in the Middle Ages they were at risk of being called heretics and hanged, or burned or whatever for their heresy, when actually alchemists were doing their best to point to the real heart of Christ's teachings. Okay, so and in a sense you could say we're really lost today. We're the whole, and the same thing has happened to other religious traditions. We've been sold belief patterns rather than experiential opening of the heart seekings. And so what I'm going to try to do is elucidate what this process is about. Do you have any questions? Anybody want to comment?
You're right about religion is from the left brain.
Right. And
in today's world.
And as we will,
the old mystics, whatever tradition, it's what you're talking about, the heart.
And in a sense, in some ways, I like to feel we may be on the verge of a new renaissance. A new renaissance which points to the deeper, heart-coherent, integral understandings of real spirituality, instead of left brain frontal cortex belief oriented. Any other comments? Or so let me get into go ahead.
I have a question about the Middle Ages alchemists, because it seems like they were deeply involved in trying to transform matter. how is that related?
That was the hidden. That was the way of disguising the inner search. One of the set of books I was blessed to read in my last graduate years was the 2 books on inner alchemy by Carl Jung. Carl Jung was one of the first people to help a modern psychiatry understand that alchemy wasn't about transforming base metals into gold. It was about transforming our baseness, our dark side, into the light. And when we learned that process, the metaphor was our life becomes golden. Okay? In other words, we discover true happiness. We find the kingdom of heaven within.
And a lot of I have a PhD in Jungian
can hear
psychology and art therapy. Today, doing therapy with people, it's all this clinical stuff that doesn't even go into the deep consciousness. And Carl Jung's psychology is not even respected much. So I went into school psychology because it was hard to start a practice as a Jungian psychologist, but now I am starting.
I just wanted to mention capitalism. For that reason, I believe a lot of people are on this inner search and there's resources out there, but because we also have to make a living, we can't go around to people's houses with alms bowls like Buddha and his followers did. We have less and less monasteries, so you can't choose a path to where you can focus on internal work. And I think that is where the split first happened, is not having a supportive culture where you can just sit and meditate all day. Instead, you have to work 5 years to get some time off, save up some money, go pay the big retreat fees.
Thousands in college. Kids can't even go anymore. It's so expensive.
Well, pass it over there.
Oh, didn't you want to say something?
I still do. This simplicity of who am I is what I garner from so many gurus today, and that ends, right there. Who am I? And I just wonder, and the other thing I wanted to say is that was a beautiful explanation. I love the way you put it all together. Thank you so much, Lynn.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I feel so blessed to have been, not only a psychologist, scientist, but a practitioner of the path for many years. Okay. So, my third book is the implications of this kind of consciousness, and I've come up with a movement towards a shift from capitalism to lovealism, which will become more apparent. But let me start with the first. A little closer, Trish. You're not quite getting it.
Well, it's loud enough.
Okay. So here's the first set of alchemals. One of the things that we're starting to understand, and there's been books written about this for years. The first step from the central nervous system awareness is to get involved in something you love to do. Okay? Because how many of you have ever know what it's like to get so involved in something you love doing that hours fly by, right? And you come out of it going, oh my God, that was so fun. That was so beautiful. I'm so grateful that I was able to get so love involved. Well, we refer to this as getting your love to do groove on. Right?
Get your groove on.
Right. And Loretta Bruning, who wrote a book on your happy chemicals, she talks about 4 neuroalchemals. She just started this process. Her book is only 4 or 5 years old. she says when we get love to do involved, we start releasing endorphins. And endorphin is that feeling, it's like, it's that love to do groove. It's like, wow, I'm grooving, right? And it just feels good. It makes me happy to be. And one of the things we're doing in traditional education is we're saying to our kids, you can't do that right now. You got to go to school and postpone loving. And so what happens is many kids, by the time they graduate high school or before, they don't have a clue what they like to do anymore, and they feel lost and they're tired of school, but they don't know how to find what they love to do anymore. Okay? But the other part of it in the autonomic nervous system and equivalence is love to feel. This insight, Loretta Bruning says we release oxytocins when we trust our emotions. It has to do with trusting. But the only way to trust your emotions, start trusting them, because a lot of our emotions are dark side, negative end, right? But if you agree to start loving, trusting your emotions, you're already bringing some of your heart into the equation. You're starting to say, wow, I'm really pissed off right now, but I'm going to approach it from a point of view of loving to trust why I'm pissed off, right? And that changes your attitude about being angry about something, because now you're bringing the heart. And what I've talked to you guys about already, the moment you start feeling some caring, some loving, your heart starts to release what I've come to refer to as love-all-ins. Your heart actually, the neural interconnections or the heart interconnections between your heart cells have dendrite-like filaments. And those dendrites, in the same way that the brain, as we'll see, releases gabapentins, I argue that the heart starts to release love-all-ins. And you start to get a feeling, wow, I can actually start loving that I'm hating something. Okay? Can you see how that would start to transform how you see your emotions?
It's kind of like total acceptance, right?
But from a place of what I like to refer to as the beginnings of the higher witnessing observer. The lover within you, the heart within you, is the higher conscious, it's the highest conscious part of you, actually. Okay? And so if you start mobilizing that in relation to trusting your emotions, you're already taking steps, which we're going to point to through further alchemical release. Any questions?
I want to go back a little bit. You first said there are 3 different nervous systems.
Right.
The central nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, but you never mentioned the third.
Well, the third part is the heart.
That's not the autonomic?
It's part of the autonomic, but the full-on actualization of the heart is something separate from the brain. So it's not brain located per se. The heart actually has an origin within the heart chakra.
If you could elaborate on that.
Well, it'll become more apparent as we keep rolling through the neuroalchemals. Any more questions about? Go ahead.
So you said the heart is separate from the brain.
Well,
Because there's a whole theory now, like with Greg Brain and the heart, the brain, the heart, and the stomach are how we view the world or whatever.
well, the Sufis have 3 chakras actually, and I can't remember the names.
No, I was just wondering if that was what you were saying.
Well,
The heart
in saying, remember, these are all metaphors. It's not really separate. That's the point. But it's distinguishable. Okay, and it's distinguishable in the sense that the opening of the heart is the key to integrating both halves of the brain. Okay? Remember, these things can only be spoken about metaphorically. That's been part of our problem.
Yeah, it's a big part of our problem.
We keep wanting to understand them from the left brain frontal cortex alone.
I understand what you're saying about Greg Braden. So the heart has its own, we have this massive electromagnetic field. And whatever the heart and brain are sometimes not in coherence at all. And so you can feel that dissonance when someone walks up to you and they're so in their mind, they're thinking maybe they're angry. You can feel that. And then there's this feeling of whoa, this presence here is calm, stable, and it does have its own field, and you can definitely feel it.
Well, it's actually the center of the whole field.
Oh, I thought you were going on.
Well, I was, but Lynn kept talking.
I just
so-
threw that in.
Yeah, no, this whole thing, having your emotions out there, rather than, making a judgment about whether your emotions are good or bad. What you're saying is be present with them.
And be
And
present from your
presence
heart.
is what it's all about.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you.
The present is a present.
So let me go on to the next three alchemals. So
Can you hear that? You can hear? Okay.
from the central nervous system point of view, the next level is to create an intention to get better at what you love to do. And the only way to get better at what you love to do is to learn to be embodied in such a way that you open all of your sensory endings. You become more and more embodied inside of your hands, your knees, your feet, your pelvis, your inner core organs. You become more and more embodied, and you open your senses, your eyes, ears, nose, and throat, and all those nervous endings into the present. In my own practice years ago, and I have an old tape on this, that I used to sell these meditation tapes. And it had to do with creating a tunnel of involvement. You know what it's like when you really get involved in something you love to do, and it feels like you're dropping in to a tunnel of here and now presence. And it's not like you're excluding things around you, but you're focusing and dropping into exactly what you're doing, and you're opening your senses to be present. So in terms of neuroalchemy, what we're discovering, this involves setting an intention to improve, to get better. And the minute you help yourself to get more present, guess what you feel? A sense of reward. You feel, oh my God, I just got a little better at doing what I love to do. And that sense of reward is the release of dopamines, okay? Dopamines are associated with that feeling of, oh my God, I can actually learn something and I can get better. Now, when we carry that same principle over to the autonomic nervous system, the significance is that there's a way of feeling our emotions which is much higher conscious. It has to do with shifting, I've talked about this before, from sympathetic, fear-based way of generating adrenaline because you're afraid of some emotion that you're experiencing, and much rather learning to agree to learn to open your parasympathetic, which is, para means above feeling the need for fear-based sympathy in relation to your emotions. And the moment you shift into parasympathetic mode, your whole nervous system relaxes. It becomes more okay with having an emotion. And as you relax, you're witnessing observer, the first stage in near death, the ability to be the transcendental witness observer to whatever you're feeling comes into play. So you don't feel the need to be so reactive, fight or flight reactive. And when we're fight or flight reactive, on the lower end, remember I showed you Abraham Hicks' famous hierarchy of emotions. When we're in fear, that's when we react from our lower end. We want to make something, you're feeling afraid of something. You're not good enough. You're not sexy enough. You're not lovable enough. And in one of your chakras or other, you're feeling something negative, and you want to blame somebody else for how you're feeling, even though you're the one feeling it. Okay? That's what lower end emotions does. That's where fight or flee, staying stuck in sympathetic, makes us want to blame the others. And then once you can blame the other, it's okay to hurt and harm them, right? Because they're somehow to blame. When the chances are, really, if you were to agree to relax into parasympathetic mode and release acetylcholines rather than adrenalines, you would become so wideband open to experiencing your emotion that you could actually dive into the core of the energy of that emotion and actually allow yourself to feel it. And as I've pointed to before, part of what Trish and I have been blessed to experience is this guy, Tom Stone, who teaches feel to the core. Because when you learn in parasympathetic mode to go into the core of feeling some anger, some resentment, what you'll discover is that in the core, it's just energy that wants to come out of you. It's just some old fear button that got triggered within you in your past, and it's still there, and you want to keep blaming others for the fear button that you have, right? Instead of taking the adult conscious responsibility to learn to face that feeling. And here's the magical thing about core feeling. When you learn to core feel, it's like being in the center of a cyclone or a hurricane. It's calm. In parasympathetic mode, you're actually the calm, observing witness to whatever you're feeling, and you're so observing it that you're going inside and helping to release whatever that charge is, so that it doesn't bother you so much anymore, so that it doesn't get triggered so easily. And in the alchemical tradition, this feeling to the core process was referred to in terms of the metaphor of cooking out the impurities in your system, right? You got to cook out all those impurities that are preventing your baseness from transforming into gold. And so what it has to do with really is each of our chakras are vulnerable to feeling fear. In the sexual center, I think I put this in my little summary. In terms of sexuality, I'm not sexy, I'm not attractive enough, right? How many of us feel that or have felt that in our lives? The opposite of that would be having felt through all of those negative charges to where you go, oh my God, I'm sexy enough, I'm attractive enough, right? And that's when you attract other people, when you feel that. If you feel not sexy enough by a law of attraction, you keep attracting people who feel you're not sexy enough. And then they want to take control of you and use you and abuse you, right? But if you have your own charge, the same goes for hara, the lower belly. It's our power, doer center. If you don't feel capable, good enough to do things to get your fair share of the pie, you're going to feel like you're being ripped off. And you're going to blame others. And rather than take responsibility to feel that negative charge that you feel. But if you feel it through and you clear that chakra, you're going to start to feel good enough. There's an example I've given you guys before when I was sitting Vipassana, my fourth sitting. There was so much pain coming up in my body it got worse and worse, and I'm in the fourth day, and it's just wildly painful in my body. And anybody who's ever sat Vipassana knows what that's like. You get through that. That's part of the lesson. But I got up and walked out of the medit hall and I squatted 100 yards away from the hall on the desert floor, and I started to bawl, really bawling from my belly. And I started feeling all the ways I felt not good enough. Not good enough for my teachers, my university professors, my father, for heaven's sake, all the different ways he'd make me feel not good enough. And even my mother, occasionally, even though she was so loving, God bless her, but even then, occasionally, she'd make me feel like I wasn't good enough. And so what I was having was a huge primal release of the feeling of not good enough. It was so huge, I rolled over on my back and was wailing to kingdom come from my belly. And then, suddenly, I had an insight, an awareness that changed everything. I went, oh my God, I must be good enough. Because I was good enough to feel totally not good enough. Okay, do you see the paradox? The same thing goes for every chakra. You know, if you're willing to face that from parasympathetic side, from feeling to the core and getting to the place where you can let that energy through as the witness not harming anybody. And there's two ways to be the witness. One is through passive, sitting quietly meditation. If you're agreeing to sit quiet still, you're not harming anybody, right? You're just feeling whatever you're feeling. And traditionally, the sad thing about it is that a lot of meditative traditions, Buddhist traditions, they placed emphasis on being embodied on the sensory side, but they didn't know how to deal with how to be present with the emotional side. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why some of us, I know there's negative feelings about Osho, but that's one of the reasons we appreciated him so much, because he was one of the first major mystical teachers to point to the importance of us learning to integrate the emotional nervous system into our meditative practice, into our being present. But there is another way in the Old Testament, rather than just learn to be quiet still. The other way was learn to let go and let God. These are like active shamanic ritual practices where you chant, you sing, and you dance, and you do the same thing. You make an agreement to be more present as you're dancing, and you make an agreement to open into being the witness to whatever you're feeling and letting it come out of you through your celebrative practice. Okay, we're starting to understand that it applies just as well to silent meditative practice as it does to active let go and let God practice. But the important thing is, in both styles of practice, you're agreeing not to be harmful. You're agreeing not to lash out. You're agreeing to take responsibility to be the feeler of your own feelings, to the point where you open the channels, okay? So, and then of course, the parasympathetic side, part of the key is to learn to now bring your heart into the witnessing, observing. Start releasing even more love-all-ins while you're releasing acetylcholines. Can you dig it? Okay. This is what we're starting to learn about alchemy. Any questions at the second part?
Are we dancing?
We're going to at the end. Okay, let's go on to the third part then. The third part is, on the central nervous system side, given you're starting to learn to get better at being more and more central nervous system open, sensory side open to whatever you're doing, especially what you love to do, you're going to start to feel self-esteem and self-confidence. Okay? You're going to start to feel worthy. It's like, oh my God, I'm capable of learning. I mean, literally, oh my God, I'm capable of learning. And I'm capable of learning about a higher conscious way of being here. And when that happens, we start to release serotonins. And serotonins give us that feeling of well-being. Interestingly enough, guess when women release a lot of serotonin? When they're pregnant. Who could be surprised?
When they're what?
Pregnant.
Yeah.
When you feel worthy, like you're doing something big for humanity. You're carrying on humanity. And you're blessed to be carrying on that humanity in your womb. And so women, as they get through into the stages of pregnancy, they start to release more and more serotonin.
Is there any evidence of when the woman is pregnant that the mate also has an increase in serotonin?
Well, I would argue that insofar as the mate is in heart bond with his woman, yes. But if he thinks he's somehow superior, and, the God force that is putting her through this because he's really the creator, right?
Trauma bond.
Right. Insofar as there's that separation, that somehow egotistically the male thinks he's above all this and the one responsible for all this, rather than as a partnership. So now we come around to the ANS side. The more we start feeling confidence that we can grow, and remember that confidence includes growing in becoming the parasympathetic witness to opening one's feelings, to clearing one's chakras of any negative-based emotion. Like in the friendship chakra, it would be you're not worthy of having friends. You're too much of a negative person. You don't deserve to have people close to you. It's not good to have people close to you. In the heart chakra, it's you're not worthy of having a family. You're not worthy of caring for your children, of really creating a loving environment where man, woman are together, creating Lovelins, a Lovelin context. And that's exactly the third stage in the autonomic nervous system, is that as you clear those chakras, including at the communications chakra level, eyes, ears, nose, and throat, it's like part of it is the more you start to understand the deeper meaning of existence, the more you want to speak the truth about the deeper meaning of existence. The more you are convinced that there is no deeper existence, meaning to the existence of anything, then you're more willing to go bullshit. You're more willing to just create lies and phony and whatever it takes to have you be material matter ahead of other people, right? So insofar as people have a lack of clarity, a lack of, I don't know the truth, I don't know that there's any deeper truth, and I'm not willing to look into it really, I'm just willing to create whatever BS it takes,
It's an excuse.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what you see of today. It's the excuses are aimed at material matter, sensory, left brain frontal cortex stuff only. Whereas to go deeper, you have to be willing to clear the chakras of any old fear-based tendencies to come from the lower end, blaming, hating, resenting. And the more the chakras start to clear, this is where it comes directly into prismatic knowing. As the chakras open more and more, you start to see reality. It's like, oh my God, reality is energetic. I see energy everywhere, right? Energy's radiating off of everything. The prismatic eye starts to open, the third eye.
And the more you see it, the more you want to be it.
Well,
Stay there, yeah.
and the more you start to fall to your knees in reverence. You start to go, oh my God, there's something much bigger picture going on here than mere physical reality. So when the third eye opens, you start to get a glimpse of metaphysics, right? So alchemy leads to metaphysical perception through the opening of the prismatic eye. And that's when people start to begin to see the aura. But it's not only an aura around people. It's, oh my God, all the plants have auras. All my animal neighbors have auras.
The birds.
Right.
Even non-living things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Not as strong
Rocks,
an aura
rocks.
as living things. And you start to
Living,
notice that.
living.
It's, oh my
Everything's
God, the
energy.
rock isn't
Rock
as
and
strong,
roll.
but it's got an aura too, you know? And so, once again, carrying this to the heart, as the prismatic eye opens more and more, the heart starts to open even more. And you start to bow in reverence. It's like, you know, I see that some part of the same sort of source of all is within everything. It's within all. I mean, this is part of the new Renaissance. The old Renaissance was that the God principle is some kind of objective thing outside of us, right? So it's some kind of left brain principle. And the new whole brain awareness, as the third eye opens, oh my God, the God principle is inherent within everything. It resonates out of everything. And that involves a new reverence, a willingness to open the heart even more, and really be thankful for the hologram that is generated all around you all the time, and that you're a part of that. So any questions about, of course, when the third eye begins to open, we start releasing entirely natural DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which is the core essence of psychedelics. Myself in meditation, because I had the blessing to learn to meditate with my emotional openness as well, I have been every bit as high on pure awareness, pure presence, as I've ever been on acid or mushrooms, which I haven't used for 45 years at least. Okay? No need to if you agree to learn to be present.
Well,
To
they're
be-
almost limiting. Once you feel that feeling, it's like, that's not good enough.
Right, I want it all the
Yeah,
time.
ayahuasca is nothing compared to
Being
the real
present.
thing. Yeah.
Right,
Realize the limits.
Yeah.
right.
But it does help, I think, the first time for people
Oh,
to
yeah.
push out of ordinary reality into something else. It sometimes takes a little drug.
It's almost like a breakthrough, it feels like.
I just want to mention, in response to what you're saying about God principle being everywhere, a story about Gandhi that I mention sometimes, but Gandhi was in a small village and he urinated on the fountain in the central square. And the elders of the village said, "How dare you desecrate the fountain in our village?" And his response was, "Show me a place where God is not."
But
There you go.
still,
So one thing I need to bring in is when people start to release, to feel to the core and let the energy rather than some negative action come out of an emotion. What happens in our midbrain area is we start to shift from shallow breathing, from adrenaline panic, shallow fear-based breathing, into more parasympathetic breathing, which is deeper, more belly, more whole body centered. And so the vagus nerve actually shifts, opens the diaphragm, opens the eyes, ears, nose, and throat in a way in which that parasympathetic awareness starts to take over.
What's the vagus nerve?
It's one of the main nerves from the midbrain area that connects into the eyes, ears, nose, and throat, and has a branch that goes down to the diaphragm.
So it's part of the central nervous system.
Well, it innervates all organs.
Right. It's more the
a
autonomic nervous system.
Oh.
So 10th cranial.
But it also involves the central nervous system. So what it does is it opens us to being emotional beings. It's particularly to being parasympathetic emotional beings. And that's why breath therapy has been, so centrally important. Because, and why people say, everybody knows this. When you're in deep panic, take 3 deep breaths, right?
When you're what?
In deep panic, deep adrenaline. When you're in sympathetic mode and you're in panic and you're scared shitless, take 3 deep breaths. And because that helps to release the diaphragm, release the vagus nerve, and you shift into parasympathetic mode. And it gives you a little more witnessing perspective instead of being caught in sympathetic. Okay? And the reason I brought that in is because I'm also a rebirthing trained therapist.
You do too? Yeah. We used to do it at High Loft. What is that place called?
The yoga center.
Frequency
High
High, and
Frequency Loft.
standing room only. It was, or laying down room only.
And it's the basis for pranayama.
Awesome.
Because now we're going to go into the final stage of 3 neuroalchemists. When a person,
Put that closer to him.
You can't hear.
Right now.
when you learn to be really central nervous system present, when you learn to be the witness that is so embodied right here and now, and meditation isn't about going to some retreat. The retreat is just a way for you to practice learning to be present. Real meditation is about being present all the time. Okay? It's another thing I love about Osho. When you finished your 10 days sitting in Pune, he'd say, now go out into the street and just be who you are. And one of the amazing things about meditating in India, you walked into the street after 10 days and everybody would bow to you. The beggars, the people, they would bow to you because they could see that you could see the light. Right? They knew that you were radiating energy and they felt you. We've done the same thing in America. You go out into the streets. Palm Springs, for example, came from a retreat with 3 of our friends sitting in a cafe. Nobody notices. Nobody notices. Because we've gotten so far away from that inner journey search.
Kids do.
That people don't. Yeah, kids would. Of course. We all come in here with the gift of pure awareness. We're taught out of it, not taught into it. And so the whole thing is you become so present in your sensory body. Every cell in your body, wow, I'm in every cell right now? How many people have done a rebirthing session here? Do you know what it's like after you breathe for an hour, how alive every friggin' cell in your body feels? It's like, oh my God, I'm joyful. We call it bliss. So when you're that present, the central nervous system, every nerve ending in your central nervous system starts to release what are known as anandamides. Anandamides were discovered in the late 1990s by 2 scientists, one American, one European. And what they noticed is that every nerve ending in your central nervous system starts to release anandamides when you're present in those cells. Do you believe it? And you know what Ananda comes from? The Hindi word for bliss. Have you ever been blissed out, present?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what starts to happen at when the central nervous system fully awakens. And when the central nervous system is fully awakened and anandamide blissed out, you start to realize, I'm not in any either or. I'm in a hologram. I'm not in just sound. I'm in taste. I'm in sensation. And everything in the whole field is part of that hologram. Go ahead.
And these higher physiological activities are very healing, right? They're just natural medicine for whatever ails.
Thank you for that,
Because
because
it's who you are.
what I see it relating to is our first inalienable right. The full-on opening of our central nervous system into bliss is to be full of life force. So full of life force, as once again that teacher used to say, full of zip, zap, zest, and zing. Okay? That's our first inalienable right.
Look at little kids. They got all
New
of them.
scripture.
Is there any one of you who wouldn't like to be full of zip, zap, zest, and zing? Is there any one of you who wouldn't want your children to be full of zip, zap, zest, and zing?
Yeah, but you have to be okay being that while everyone else around you is looking at you like, ugh, what are you doing?
But imagine if we were to teach for that instead of avoid it and shut it down. You know, it's not just the right to be alive, it's the right to be full of zip, zap, zest, and zing. And what if we started to so value that we put it as one of our inalienable rights that we need to teach for? Okay? So now we come to the higher end of the autonomic nervous system. When we start to integrate our chakras, and they start to integrate into the heart. Remember I showed you the images that the Om symbol, the Star of David, the Sufi diamond heart, they all suggest the integration of the lower triangle of chakras with the upper and bring them together in the heart. Imagine if that started to become so integral, your chakras became so open and coherent that both halves of the brain would start to light up together. Above the third eye is the corpus callosum. And there's something about opening into pure energy that activates the corpus callosum, starts to integrate both halves of the brain, and every brain cell in the brain starts to release gabapentins. Gabapentins are a neuroalchemy between every brain cell in the dendrite connection. The dendrite releases it when it's present. And it releases gabapentin. And what gabapentin does is create a brain flash. It goes flash in your brain. So imagine if the whole brain went flash. What do you think you might flash into becoming aware of? That everything is made of the same source of all. Everything, Christ said it brilliantly. Make thine eye singular, and thy whole being shall be filled as with light. Thy whole being shall be filled as with light. You'll shift from darkness into light. And then he also said, when me and my Father are as one, when me and the same source of all become as one, there's no separation between me and the grand hologram anymore. There's just oneness. Then it is if I am in heaven. Not only have you in a second stage of near death, come to see that light, same source light, is the root of all manifestation. And not only do you see that, now the heart really begins to vibrate and resonate with love all ends. It starts to resonate so powerfully, you drop to your knees. How many of you have ever had a moment where you've just literally dropped to your knees because you had your mind so friggin' blown? That left brain frontal cortex was so blown that you went, I never knew that the same source of all is within all, and I see it now. And given that the same source of all has been said to equal the last stage of near death, nothing other than pure love, you now become one. Consider the Father as a metaphor for the same source of all. Me and my Father, or the same source of all, are now as one. Every one of us have actually had experiences like this. But we get it thrown aside. What's important is how many bucks you make, how big a house you have, what kind of car you drive. And so what I'm saying is we're starting to understand the importance of us being willing to educate alchemically and metaphysically in the way that Christ and all the great teachers of the world have attempted to point us towards, which is that the full-on opening of our hearts is the deepest awareness, but also the deepest guiding principle. It's once the heart is open, your insights, the flashes in your brain, start to become more and more loving, holistically upper end oriented.
I'm just afraid when we talk about the chemicals that when such awareness becomes more widespread in public, that instead of truly rising to this awareness, that chemists will give us these chemical pills and everything to artificially provide these chemicals instead of realizing it through personal growth.
That's fear.
Well, that's what so many people are on right now.
Right.
All
So
these
what do you say to
drugs
that?
To feel better.
Well, this is where, my feeling is, I don't feel like the answers are political. I feel like the answer is more in us agreeing to put higher conscious education first and foremost. And part of that is, which many people today recognize, and leading edge psychiatry and psychology are recognizing this more and more. Yes, taking those neuroalchemals that facilitate glimpses can be significant. But the deeper significance is for you to take on the responsibility to make this how you live. And I want to end with just one last little thing before we chant together. I even came to this understanding, raised as a Greek Catholic. Nomine Patre, imagine nomine Patre, Madre, et Filio, not just et Filio, but et Datura, not only sons but daughters. So we start to recognize the God principle, the Father, the same source of all, as both male and female. And we, humans, as made in the image, are sons and daughters of the same source of all. It's spiritu et sanctu. The sacred spirit, the pure energy, the same source of all, which is light, the one light, the same source light, is what brings the Father, Mother, Son, Daughter together. Amen. That's the picture. Get it? That's the picture. For us to learn to see that we are all part of the Father, Mother. And part of that, left brain frontal cortex has been considered to be masculine kind of thinking. Right brain, occipital cortex because it opens your inner visionary ability. It opens your prismatic eye to see, to get insight about the whole. So picture that that's equally important and may even be more powerful than the male principle. And together in a marriage, in a whole brain, we start to see the real blessing of existence. And I mean, if you were the same source of all, could you have not possibly designed anything more brilliant than to make it possible to gift every human being with the possibility to integrate the male and the female principle together as sons and daughters of oneness within the heart. I mean, can you see, could design be any more brilliant? We just have to stop being stupid is, stupid does, and refusing to see that. Can you dig it?
I think once you've had that experience, you're always looking for it. Once you've tasted existence and that love,
Any
And then
other?
you're looking for the people. Right? You're looking for the people that feel the same way.
But also for the people who feel the same way to start to take the lead rather than the background, so that we can help lead those who are lost.
Help those
We're
who
not
are
separate.
what?
Lost.
Hey,
Who don't see the whole picture.
we're not separate.
And love is the key.
Well, it's it. When we start looking outside, whatever, all kinds of things go crazy. Go ahead.
Yeah,
But
when we
if-
come back to the love, that's the key, I think, and you're saying it. But Groff in the Cosmic Game says those that have experienced the divine in one of two ways. One is this brilliant light, the other is sunyata, the emptiness, the void, from which the things arise. Integration of the two is something that I don't know how you get there, personally. I can go to the void and emptiness. When you talk about the breath work, and having done yours, having done the golden, and having done Groff's, the golden, my eyes change color. Physiologically, there's something going on. So I think a lot of this stuff is experiential. Just we have to do it and to experience it. And at 1:30 today, we're going to do a shamanic drumming journey over at the Taoist Community of Love, the drummer. And that is another way of accessing these parts of ourselves. There's no exclusive. To me, the going to the drugs, the holotropic breath work that was almost the same thing as ayahuasca. And I went to the same place. So these things we have to experientially see what works for us because we're all individuals. What is my process?
And part of what I was trying to point to is when you understand this neuroalchemical process, the whole idea is to develop here and now present practice, which would support the release of these ever higher neuroalchemals within us. Because in a sense, it's us learning to release this stuff at higher and more integral, coherent levels of consciousness that gives us the experience of the bigness, the noose.
Excuse me. I had once watching the sunset, but I had both my horses with me, one on this shoulder and one on that one. Their heads are pretty heavy when they start dropping down. And it was the most incredible experience because horses live in the here and now. And when it was like having two masters with me. And they bring you in to their space. And they're just in bliss. I was like, oh my God. It was like, it was wonderful.
I'd like to say something. Thank you. Lynn, I've been in bliss listening to you speak. My love lens have been just pounding. I'm in gratitude of your research and bringing forward this ancient knowledge. And so I just really want to say thank you to be here in this circle and practice the feeling of the love lens in the presence. And as you spoke and go deeper, it just got wider. So I am just sharing gratitude.
Thank you.
First, I want to make a joke that this is all Lynn's secret scheming because this new idea of his is love Lynn.
Oh!
No,
It's all about loving Lynn.
all in. Love all
It
in.
is.
To be all
Love
in.
all of Lynn.
Love
So,
this. I
What
just-
a creator.
I want to, my own work attempts to introduce a new idea of alchemy, and you're describing the ancient alchemy as ridding the impurities from the chakras. My new vision of alchemy is that coal is carbon. Diamond is also carbon. So our growth and, say, transcendence or realization is a progression from being coal to being diamond. Whereas coal is dust, it's dirty, it's opaque. Diamond is clear, it's brilliant, it's full of light. That this movement from coal to diamond is the path of spiritual growth.
Yeah.
Where's the diamonds?
Here.
Oh.
I am Lynn.
You thought there was going to be
I was going to take that.
So, we're going to do a little bit of chanting from the heart. But one last comment. In both the Buddhist and the ancient Chinese, incidentally, alchemy has been traced back to the Vedas and to